Welcome to My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson, a journey into the deepest teachings of Torah and their application to our personal, emotional, and psychological lives.
A good tavach, a good week. We continue our journey in the life-changing Sefer HaTanya. Hope everyone had very meaningful Matan Torah and Kabbalah Torah. This program is made possible by Rena Lights LLC and is dedicated in honor and memory of Rabbi Yosef Halevi Weinberg Olav Shalom, Rabbi Moshe Pinchas HaKohen Katz Olav Shalom, and Rabbi Yael HaKohen Khan Olav Shalom. It is also in schus and merit of Rav Zev Yecheskel HaKohen and Risha Katz La'edich Yomim V'Shanim Tevis for many long, healthy years. So we are close to the end of Perek Yud Tes, chapter 19, which is a continuation of chapter 18, which began like a new section in Tanya, talking about the natural Ava Mesuteres, dormant and hidden love within each neshama, within each soul. In contrast to what we were talking about before, the avodah of contemplation that gives birth to Ava V'yira, to love and reverence of Hashem. As we discussed at length, both these different aspects and why he begins with the avodah, the Ava that comes through avodah. But now we're talking Korav Elecha Dover Me'ed to everyone, because every neshama, every yid, no matter what, even someone, like he said at the beginning of Perek Yud Ches, Af misha daitek tzara b'yediyas Hashem ve'ein le'leiv lahavim b'gdula seinsei baruch hu leheil memenet chila rechimu afilu b'mechit finos levad afal pikein Korav Elecha Dover Me'ed lishmer elasis kol mitzvos HaTorah and b'levave mamish because he has the Ava Mesuteres. And he's been discussing what this Ava Mesuteres. Even someone who doesn't have the mind, the capacity to contemplate, not even the contemplation that he speaks about in chapter 16 and 17, that leads to not a total passionate emotion, but one that says it's worthy, you oscillate, it's worthy of loving God, even that not, but he still has the Ava Mesuteres, which is Yerushalayim Aviseinu. That's where it's rooted from. That's where we get it from, and it's rooted, as he said, in the Chachma Shebenefesh, which comes from Ein Sof Baruch Hu, that manifests within Chachma. So we're talking about a level that's beyond Seichel and Tam V'das, beyond contemplation. So we say someone has something inherent. It's not about whether it makes sense. It's not whether it's coming due to a contemplation, due to a logical and rational process. It's who you are. It's your very natural self. But it's Mesuteres, to the point it can be in Golus, like we learned. But it always remains intact. As a result of that, Korav Elecha Dover Me'ed, for every yid, every neshama. But like you said, it could be in Golus, it could be asleep. What wakes it up is when it's challenged. That's when you see that even a Kal Shebekalman, Peishi Yisrael, even a sinful person, challenge that we want you to bow down to Avodah Zarah. There, suddenly, it will awaken. Because he feels how it's negay benefesh, like a matter of life and death. Like we learned. That the words of the Alter Rebbe, like this, Lamed bin Hussein, when it comes to a situation, so even though the klippus, his whole life, is under the control of the opposite of godliness, that when it comes to something that affects his hamunah, his faith in the one God, which is rooted in the Chachma Nefesh Alikis, in which manifests Ein Sof, Harei Kol HaKlippos B'Teilim u'B'Vatolim. all those coverings disappear. They completely melt away. The 4 psukim that he brings to demonstrate that. They all disappear because of this crisis, because of this challenge. And then he continues, as we learned in the last year, it doesn't just affect these faculties of the person. Meaning when it's challenged with something in Amunah B'Hashem Echad, faith in God, he will rise to the occasion. But it also affects Godel ve'etzim keiche kol kach, which only demonstrates how much more Korav Elecha Dover made. It is so powerful, legarish litchis asit rach v'klipus, that they don't even touch to drive away, and to drive away and to dispel and to repel anything of the klippus, to the point that it shouldn't even affect his levushim. Not just his inner faculty. Sometimes we do things just for show, but inside we don't feel anything. So when it comes to a challenge of Amunah B'Hashem, of course inside he's affected and will not in any way act on it. But you could say maybe just leponim, maybe just externally. Even that not. Fil levushav. Machshava dibra ma'aser shel Amunah Hashem echad. And his Meisher Nefesh, not to do anything in action that would demonstrate something that demonstrate is in something that is against the faith in one God. For example, even though he doesn't believe in it at all, he won't even do it externally for show. Like we spoke about the story with Chana and her 7 sons. The son wouldn't even bow to pick up the ring, even though he is at all not bowing to any Avodah Zarah. It just appears. It just don't bowing to pick up the ring, but it appears that he is bowing to Avodah Zarah, so he won't do that. And same with he won't speak anything. Even though he doesn't feel for it, he won't even say something externally that goes against Amunah B'Hashem. And that's where we stopped. So this comes to demonstrate how powerful the Ava Mesuteres is, which only strengthens the Korav Elecha Dover made. Because you could say, okay, it doesn't affect his faculties. So when they get awakened by this challenge, this sign, by this test, so he's going to demonstrate, I stand with God. But externally, you could say maybe he's still affected, because the bottom line is he's lived a life that's not aligned completely with godliness, as we've learned. He is a sinful person. But once he's been challenged, even externally, he won't betray God, even if it's completely superficial. So now comes the end of the Perek. The Alter Rebbe goes back to what he began in chapter 18, where, if you recall, he said 4 things he wants to explain. What is the root of this Ava Mesuteres? That he explained in chapter 18. In the order, let's go back to the order that he said. So we'll have it exactly in the right order. So the first thing he said, Sheidish Avazu, that he explained in chapter 18. Inyana, he explained in chapter 19. What is the inyan? What is the mavukish? What is the longing of this love? What is it coming to do? Like the flame that wants to reconnect and be absorbed in its source. Eichi Yerushalanu, also in chapter 18. How it's a Yerusha? Because they were Merkava. So they merited to pass on their DNA, so to speak, of this Ava Mesuteres to every one of their children. And then the final thing, Ve'ech nichel gam bo gam tchilu. Because remember, we're talking not just Ava, but also Yira, also reverence. How, we're talking about Ava Mesuteres, doesn't say Yira. So how does this encompass Yira? Now he's going to answer that and explain that point here in the end of chapter 19. So he says, V'zeh nikra, he continues, and let's read inside. V'zeh nikra tchila hanichel berechimu. And this that we just described, that a person is willing completely to give his life away for God when challenged, due to the fact that his chachma, shebenefesh, which has within Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the infinite divine light manifesting in it, has been awakened, this is called also reverence that is contained in love. Tchilu is yira in Aramaic, hanichlelas, hanichlo rather, berechimu, contained in love. Rechimu being love and tchilu being yira. Avim v'yira. So let's explain what this means. When you really break it down, Av and Yira are obviously interdependent. When you love something, you dislike anything that's the opposite of it. So if you love someone, you love your parent dearly, you also don't want to in any way separate from them. So Ava brings to Yira. The Yira, which is the reverence, the fear, that you shouldn't be separated. So in general, you can call it a love. But it's a love that also includes in it avoiding the opposite of it. So generally speaking, where do you see the love? You see the love in the longing, in the connection, the desire to connect with the one you love. Where do you see the yira? You see in your resistance to anything that will separate you. So the Alter Rebbe is saying, the fact is that when you ignite, when you trigger that Ava Misuteres, it doesn't just trigger that you want to be connected. It also triggers the fear, the yira, not to be disconnected, which is why you're ready to die for it. Because you could argue the love, who says you're ready to die for it? Who says you're ready? You could say, I love it very much, and I'll do everything for that love. But the fact that you don't want to be disconnected 1 second tells you there's a reverence involved as well, a yira. So the fact that a person is ready to die, rather than transgress and do something that separates him from God, from Hashem Echad, that tells you that there's a reverence that is contained in love. And if you do anything that would compromise, you would not make sure nothing should compromise that love. Shehi, so he goes on, what's the Dichila Nichel Berechimu? She Ava Hativis Shebenefesh Alikis. This love that we're talking about is the Ava Hativis, the natural love that we're talking about, the natural love that a person has inherently in the Nefesh Alikis, Shebecholos Yisrael, that is found in all Israel, that we discussed at length earlier. Shechefza v'ritzeina b'tiva lidovek b'sharsha mekeda, whose innate desire and will is to be attached to its root and source, sharsha mekeda. Where's the root and source? Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the blessed infinite light. That's that natural love. Shemepnei avazu v'rotzen zeh, and as a result of this love, as he said, this will, that it's saying v'chefza, the will to be connected, he yira mefachedes betiva minigei b'ktzei tumas avei dezorah chas v'shalom. It therefore also causes that there should be a natural repulsion, a natural aversion, and a trepidation. He says the words yira, yireya umefachedes, a fear and a trepidation in natural, betiva, to have even the slightest association, minigei b'ktzei. B'ktzei means like the edge, not even the thing itself, but even anything, any pollutant. The slightest association with the impurity of idol worship, chas v'shalom, God forbid. She neged amuna Hashem echad, which is in conflict with the faith in one God. So there's the chiyuv part, which is the faith and the connection, and then there's the aversion to anything that's the opposite. So now you have that when real ava right away brings also yira. In this case, tchila hanichlal b'rechimu. And as he said earlier, afilu b'lefushei achitzenim, even in the outer garments, shem diburei maisa, bli amuna b'lev klal. To the extent, even with this association, you could say, is not its faculties, it's only an external, superficial thing. Even there, it only involves the soul's outer garments of speech and action, and there's no faith whatsoever in his heart, in this person's heart. Bli amuna lev klal. Even that not. In other words, even the appearance of a disconnect, because his love is so deep. So when you really love something, it's not just you don't want to be disconnected, you don't want it even to appear, you don't even want to have a shemetz, what he calls b'ktsei, any pollutant. That's where you find people who love each other. It's just not just the general. They're careful. When you love your child, for example, you'll see a newborn child. There's a little stain, there's a little piece of dirt, you clean it out. Say, oh, you love your child, in general he's clean, or she's clean. No, the love creates a situation where you don't want anything, even something external, even something very superficial, to affect, in some way, touch this love. So there you have the tchila hanichel b'rechimu that I spoke about earlier at the beginning of chapter 18. And with this he concludes chapter 19 in Tanya. So chapters 18 and 19 are essentially two chapters in one topic, the topic of Ava Musateres, in all aspects of it. It's inyan, what it is. It's sheidish, I should say, its root. It's inyan, it's Yerusha, why I say Yerusha Ma'avesenu, and now how it also encompasses this hidden love, reverence, yira. And this is all what's natural to each one of us. So in addition to the ability that every person has to contemplate and to give birth to Ava V'yira, we say every person, he said here that people don't have that level of capacity. But meaning in addition to everything we've learned till chapter 17, till the end of chapter 17, now we have a whole other dimension, which is in the domain of every person. So take, for example, the Rambam, in Hilchos Gerushin, Seif Perek Beis. So in the language of halacha, she talks there about Keifanesi Ashem Eretzani, that if someone refuses to give a get, you compel him till he says, I want to. So of course the question is, then it's a get mu'usa. He's forced. You're not allowed to force someone to give a get. So the Rambam asks the question and answers. It's a fascinating answer. It's like a Chassidish answer if you think about it. He says, no, you're not compelling him to give the get. It's the Yetzer Hara Yitzrehu Sha'anse. His Yetzer Hara that's compelling him to do something opposite of his nature. Because every Yid, as he says there, Reitzah wants to fulfill and perform all the mitzvahs. And furthermore, wants to stay away from every Aveda. Both things. They're drawn to mitzvahs and to stay away from anything that disconnects him from Hashem. That's his natural desire. It's the Yetzer Hara that comes and compels him, is forcing him to do something opposite of his natural being. I didn't see in the commentaries, they quote the Rambam to support what the Alter Rebbe is saying here, but it seems to be literally very similar. Obviously, the Alter Rebbe explains what it means, the Ava Mesoteres and all of that. But the very essence of the idea, what is natural? This is what's natural to a Yid. Without Aveda. It's not because he reached a Madrege that he's compelled. No, that's who he is. That's what every Yid wants, to do Torah mitzvahs. Or in the language of the Alter Rebbe, a Yid nicht will, nicht kann sein, abgerissen von Elikus. Not he wants and not he can be cut off, God forbid, severed from godliness. So this gives us a whole new dimension of what a neshama is all about. To using more psychological terms, there's the resources we build up through our work. We work hard to build up strength, to awaken ourselves healthy emotions. But then there are the things that we have inherent within us. And just as he spoke earlier in chapter 12, if you recall, Moich Shalta Lalev, he said, is not an acquired skill. It's born. You're born naturally with it. But there, it was natural that you have natural self-control over yourself, and therefore you can control and subdue and resist temptations. And serve Hashem. That's what a Beinoni is. Here he's talking the natural love that a person has. So you imagine when you have both the natural love that we're talking about and the natural ability of self-control and all that he spoke about earlier, combine both, and you have the most powerful Korvei Lecha Dover made. So you see here in Tanya how the Alter Rebbe, and it's just mind-blowing. It's awesome how the Alter Rebbe is teaching us the power that we have, both in Aveda, and even if you can't achieve that level of Aveda inherently, but we have to reveal it. And it's revealed through challenge, through crisis. In the later chapters, he's going to explain that's not just Aveda Zarah or when you're in the Sayim, but the truth is a person can access this Ava Mesoteres in every mitzvah and avoiding every Aveda. He's going to discuss this at length in the next chapters, from Peilik Chof through Peilik Chof Hey. But we'll get to that in the next year. But meanwhile, what we've established is this inherent love. And Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, like a flame that naturally gravitates is the wrong word, the opposite of gravitates. It's drawn and elevates to its source, to be absorbed in its source. So too, that's what a neshama is. We have a natural, transcendent nature, like a flame, to rise above, as we learned earlier. So it tells us the power that a human being has. It tells us the power that every Id has. And we're coming now from Matan Torah, 3,336 years from the year when Matan Torah happened. Matan Torah was, of course, a tremendous show of love of Hashem to us by giving us Ata v'chatonim v'kol amim, and giving us the Torah. And we too have a love to Hashem. It's a love that goes both directions. So we hear now, we're learning how that love is an inherent part of who we are, like a child and a father. That doesn't come from Aveda. They have natural love for each other. The Aveda we learned is also critical. But right now we're learning about the inherent love. So our job is to reveal that love and let it permeate and saturate in a conscious way all our faculties. In the coming program, he's going to speak how we contemplate and how we can bring out this love. And the Yira as well, the reverence, not to do anything opposite in all matters, in all mitzvahs. You speak about Anochi and Lo Yeh Lecho, which of course are the two of the first 10 commandments that we just read by Matan Torah, so it's connected to that. And we see from here, going back to the very central theme of Tanya, Korvei Lecha Dover Meid, how relevant, how connected. Because imagine, no matter what happens to you, you always have this pilot flame burning. No matter what happens, you always have this transcendent element. It could be asleep, it could be dormant, but it's always active, to the point that it affects, even as he said, the externals. So with that, he concludes chapter 19 in Tanya. Just a few more words about this whole context. And we'll begin chapter 20 next week, next year, is this. In general, many schools of psychology, lahavdil, not Jewish schools, talk about the human being as being naturally an animal, Freudian id, social Darwinism, survival of the fittest, that a person essentially is a selfish creature. But since there's an ego and a superego, we have forces that so-called superimpose themselves to behave civilly. It's also in our interest. The selfish gene civilly will thrive more when you have coexistence with others. So it's also a selfish interest. Basically, everything's about me, have. I want me, I want it. The Alter Rebbe's Chiddush which is based, of course, in Torah, is that it's true, Yetzer Lev Adam Ram and Urav. But that's in Pasha Neach, that we have a Yetzer Hara. In Pasha Bereshis, first we're taught there's an Nefesh Elokis. Every person is created B'Tselem Elokim. And like he explains in chapter 2 in Tanya, Vayipach Ba'apav Nishmas Chayim, B'Techiyusei Nofach, B'Primiyusei. It's coming, every one of us has a neshama, transcendent divine soul. That's our inherent self. So if you think of the contrast of how we look at a human being, how we look at a yid from the eyes of the Tanya, it's a whole different look. You have an animal soul within you, and you can behave, unfortunately, choose to behave like an animal. Selfish, narcissistic, hedonistic. But your natural you is the Nefesh Elokis. So there's the natural power of Moich Shalta Lev, but there's also the natural power of the Ava Misoteres. So when you think of it, it's just a tremendous different way to look at yourself and others. Which explains why we say, Afal Pishachot Yisrael. There's a chet, but he's a Yisrael. The Rebbe once explained, where it says, Rev Yisrael, Rev Gamvi Yisrael Heim in Eretz Yisrael. That even if the Rube is being a Ganef, but he's still Yisrael. He remains a Yisrael. So it's a whole way of looking at a Yid, at yourself as well. This doesn't mean that we overlook the negative. We have to clean it up. Like he said here, we have to do everything possible not to be toxified. But the essence of who you are is the Ava Misoteres. And that can be brought forth and impact your life. It's because the natural you. Well, that will stop here. The end of chapter 19 in Tanya, 19 Prokim. And as I said, next year we're going to continue chapter 20. This has been my life, Tanya Applied. TanyaApplied.com. You can find this and all previous programs archived. Everyone should have a good tavach, a good summer, a healthy summer, a meaningful, and be mamshech matan Torah all year round. And the Eibishter should protect Eden and Eretz Yisrael and Eden everywhere. And we continue our journey in learning Tanya, learning Chassidus that will bring Mashiach, Osimar do Malka Mashiach.
This has been My Life Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Please join us again next week. Visit ChassidusApplied.com for archived classes and more resources.